Good afternoon, everyone. Those of us who are joining us from here in India, and for those of us who are joining us from the Western part, good morning, and welcome to this special session of D Talks or Disruptive Literacy Talks. I'm your host, Mashood. As we continue this journey of discussing ideas, discussing disruptive solutions to address the challenges of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, especially with focus on the SDG 4 goals of making sure that all our children achieve the basic education and the elementary level education that they deserve. It's important to think of ideas that have worked in the past and looking at ideas that might work in the future and that might be replicated in different contexts. And one such idea, kind of a very disruptive idea that we're going to discuss today with two of our special guests today, is the idea of how networks and alumni can help achieve equitable opportunities and democratize the access to opportunities, especially in education, with respect to children as well. And to speak today, we have two very special guests from the organization InHive. We have Prerna Aswani, who is a project lead at InHive, and she's been working in the area of, again, democratizing access to networks, access to opportunities, education, and employment for the young population. And she has also worked across different geographies with foundations, university institutions, and not-for-profit organizations. So, Prerna, thank you so much for joining us today here.
Hi, Mashood. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And we're also joined by Gemma, who is a senior project lead at InHive. She is a development specialist. She's worked, she's a multifaceted person, has worked in fundraising, developing impact frameworks, project management, and building alumni networks. And that's something which we're very interested to also learn as to how building such networks can be facilitated and how it can help. And she's also worked across various geographies, including developing partnerships with various foundations at the international level. So Gemma, thank you so much for your valuable time and for joining us here on D-Talks.
Thank you. Right. Excited to be here.
Right. So for those of us who are also watching this live, we'd like to share that Prerna and Gemma have a very engaging presentation for us. And we would encourage everyone to also share their questions and comments. And after the presentation, we'll have a discussion where we'll try and take some of the audience questions as well. So Prerna and Gemma, the stage is yours.
Thank you. I will just share my screen. Hopefully we can see my screen now.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, the screen is visible. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, thank you so much for having us both. We are both from an organization called InHive. InHive is a specialist of, originally we started just with alumni networks. We worked mostly with schools starting in the UK, realizing that it was mostly elite schools that could really harness the power of their alumni and using their alumni, as we all know, that really important network to be able to introduce you to job opportunities, internships. If you're an entrepreneur, introducing you to people who can invest in your idea, and basically just having role models that come from the same area as you and the same background as you. So because we realized this seemed to be just quite an elitist thing to have, InHive did a bit of research outside of the UK into 9 other countries, including Pakistan, East Africa, Australia. And there we saw the same thing happening, that a lot of schools were not harnessing the power of their alumni, but they also had the same problems. So they still had issues around unemployment, around not having strong role models, not having that network to be able to go on to the next stages of their life. Then beyond schools, we started working with organizations that work also with youth. The youth could be in programs such as MasterCard Foundation, Ashoka, Teach for All. So these are all programs that support youth in some way and have alumni. So any program that has gone on for at least 5 years, you know that they do have alumni. So here we noticed that if you were investing in a young person, certainly in a scholarship, we were hearing the same thing from them, that they felt that once they had finished their scholarship, that they still needed this network to be able to help guide them onto their next stage of life. So this is where we came in as experts. We come in and we work alongside partners. So we work within the structures and the community and context that they already have. We try to get them to understand the power of their alumni. So what are the things that the alumni can do to help them as an institution? So not only creating these role models, are they people that can come in and give talks to the students? Can they mentor the students? If students need help with certain subjects or maybe soft skills that are needed in the job market, are these alumni the people that you can tap into? They're also a resource for finances. So we all know, if we've been to university, that you get those regular emails from a university asking for support. So that is also possible with alumni, but it isn't the only source. It isn't just financial. We can use our alumni here to let them extend their networks. So work experience, helping young people to realize all of the options that are available to them. And then that goes on to internships and then also jobs as well. And then the final thing is around advocacy. So a lot of our organizations working with youth are advocating for something. So in this particular example, we're advocating for literacy. And to be able to do that, you need a group of like-minded people who share a vision. And so this very much comes from your alumni. There are people that have come from your program and passionately believe and know that your solution works. So these are the people that you can draw upon to be able to amplify your message. This is important for you as an organization to be able to get more people to join your program. It's also important for getting funding. And it's also important for the community element. So if you want to be able to change policy, if you want to encourage education to change, to governments to think of education in a different way, to trial and pilot new education programs, certainly around literacy, then you need to have these advocates to help you do that. So that is basically what we do in a nutshell. We also have, we do a lot of our own research, and we also have a new platform called Nexus, and that is for other network leaders to be able to come together and share their ideas and learnings and failures so that they can also learn from them. Because we do realize that this is a very specialist and niche area. It's also traditionally quite underinvested in, as a lot of traditional funders see this as quite a new area and a bit unsure about it. But the great thing about the alumni model is that it's so low cost, right? You can already tap into the resources that you have. So if you have somebody within your organization who's working with communications, then that's the person who can work with the alumni to get those messages out there. And then the alumni can also provide resources themselves, so financial, but also them themselves being able to provide teaching, mentoring, etc. So it is such a great resource that's there, but is often very forgotten, as we have said here. So I will hand over to Prerna to give you some stories to back this up.
Perfect. Thanks, Gemma. And definitely, as Gemma said, there is a huge potential of alumni supporting schools and their communities in a variety of different ways. I think the power of alumni networks really comes from the fact that it's very locally led, locally rooted development. Alumni generally have strong positive associations with the schools and the institutions they've been part of, so want to give back and want to contribute to the broader goals of the program or the institution that they're part of. And they also have the context of being quite embedded in the environment to effectively define the solutions that are right for that community. And I think to that point, a really good example and case study is some work that we had done in the southern part of Rwanda with a partner called Health Poverty Action. Now, similar to some of the contexts that we work with in India, in Rwanda and in southern Rwanda, there are in certain communities a degree of severe poverty, to the extent that sending your child to school can be a significant financial barrier for a lot of parents and families. And actually there is an expectation, particularly with girls, that they will start supporting the family as soon as possible and bringing income home to the family, which has meant that even pre-COVID, retention at schools, particularly girls' retention in schools, has been a significant challenge. And whilst we were working with our partner HPA in Rwanda, we helped them create a strategy to support schools in building alumni networks and re-engaging alumni and former students effectively of schools to support within the school. And what we found in this situation actually is that the alumni who had come back to school to help and volunteer were very integrated both in the realities and the challenges of the school, but also very embedded in the local community. And as a result, they were really able to interrogate and investigate, why aren't girls coming to school? Why are their students considering dropping out of school? And what they found is part of the barrier is simply affording some of the resources needed to go to school, whether those are books, school uniforms, school meals, which come at a cost, which were serving as financial barriers for a lot of these girls in the southern province of Rwanda to attend school. So what, in this context, what the alumni that we were working with decided to do is really go out to the community, appeal to the community, the village, the town leaders with this challenge of, look, so many young people aren't going to school because they're unable to afford school meals. So they actually were able to successfully advocate for local leaders to subsidize school meals for the most impoverished students within these schools, so that that was no longer a barrier for these students to attend school. And what we found is that as a result of that initiative, we found more girls going back to school, and also those that were considering dropping out actually staying at school as a result of this intervention. And really what this example reflects the power of alumni in really being able to get to the crux of the problem, because they're in the environment. They're relatable to students, and they are near peer role models, so students feel comfortable speaking to them about their personal challenges, but they're also embedded in the community, so are able to effectively communicate and understand the context of school leaders leaders and local leaders to negotiate solutions with them. So they, in this case, were able to also serve as a really powerful bridge between the student community and leaders within the villages and the towns that we were working with. So in this case, really, alumni can play a huge role in serving as advocates for girls staying in school, but also helping dismantle some of the barriers that are causing them to drop out. So yeah, and actually my second example is similar but quite different, of this partnership that we worked with in Pakistan and supporting Care Foundation in Pakistan, who run about 800 schools across the country to help them build alumni networks within their schools and actually create a leadership structure of volunteer alumni who would lead alumni committees within their schools. And what was interesting in this scenario and this context was that alumni were really aware of some of the challenges in the capital city of Lahore, with a huge amount of smog and pollution that the city was facing, and realizing that there just isn't enough education and information being spread in schools around climate change. And the challenges, the risks for society with climate change, but also some of the simple solutions each individual can adopt to contribute to the solution, whether it's around saving water, whether it's around saving resources, recycling. So in the context of these schools in Pakistan, we actually found that the alumni committees banded together to create campaigns around climate change and create awareness around climate change within the schools, so that the students, but also the school leaders, the teachers, were all educated around what they can do to support climate change initiatives, even at a very local level. So again, I think looking at these two very distinct examples shows us that alumni aren't just useful for one thing. Often people see alumni, as Gemma said, as a resource to ask for money and donations for a school, or to bring back for careers, mentoring and career support for students and young people, which are very valid and relevant ways to leverage alumni, but actually they can be leveraged to address so many of the different issues surrounding communities. So we're really a powerful network that can be leveraged to identify what some of the challenges in your local context are, and even create locally led solutions towards them. So I hope that sort of gives a little bit of a broad overview of the potential of alumni in addressing a number of different challenges.
So then the question is, how is this relevant to you? So COVID-19 has obviously caused a lot of disruption for a lot of people, but we've seen that really strongly within the education sector. So with a lot of young people missing up to 18 months and ongoing of school, that's also causing a challenge. You've also got a challenge that a lot of the education has moved online, and not everybody has access to that online. I'm sat here in Nairobi in Kenya, and in East Africa, we are lucky that we do have great internet, but it's not always great. And there's definitely a lot of areas that don't have access. So what we're getting is, again, this kind of the gap between the privileged and the less privileged is becoming bigger. So we're seeing a widening literacy gap. And so the disadvantages that they had before are becoming greater now. And if we think about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we were trying to work towards this to make sure that everybody has access to quality education, to make sure that gender, so when we think about girls and girls' education, that they're having the same equal access. Now, with COVID-19, we're seeing all of this good work start to roll back, unfortunately. So I think looking at alumni as a solution to some of these problems can be a really great low cost and easily accessible solution. Here we can see the alumni already within these communities who can help support this literacy movement. They are, as we say here, a crucial pool of volunteers. They are people who can come forward and give their time to be able to help some of these disadvantaged people. And here you've got this amplifier effect where you may have 5 or 10 teachers, but then if we add those alumni, we can take that up. We can take that up to hundreds, and then going further and further, thousands, hundreds of thousands. So really for us, that is why we're very passionate about getting this message out there that alumni are a great resource. And I think today we would love to hear from you some ideas around this, how you can leverage your alumni, and some questions for us, because we know that this is a very new and an emerging space. So hopefully today we can answer your questions and get you to start thinking about this crucial resource that you have.
Thank you so much, Gemma and Prerna, for that really powerful presentation. I think you've really opened and triggered a lot of doors with respect to how we can, when we are talking about solutions to foundational learning and the power, the resources that we have in our alumni is such a such a practical option, and you guys have done done an amazing job with InHive with respect to leveraging those resources. So it's truly amazing the work which you guys are doing, and thank you so much for sharing these ideas. When you were talking about role models, right? Like identifying role models in the community, and starting from there, making them the fulcrum of change in the community. Especially when we talk about making change in the school education ecosystem, what would you say would be some distinguishing factors of these role models who you guys have been working with?
Definitely. I think what's interesting about role models is people often see role models as somebody famous and somebody who's the CEO of a big company or achieved something very massive that's on global news, which is inspirational, and you do need inspirational role models, but actually what you also need is relatable role models, because if that person who has created a fantastic new innovation also had access to the best private schools, the best universities, it can often feel like, okay, I have this aspiration, but how do I achieve it? I don't know the how. Whereas actually thinking about role models within your own community and alumni who have achieved success within your own communities, the reason these people are quite helpful and powerful is because there's also a helpful pathway for success for young people and children to follow of these are people that are quite accessible to them to speak to, of like, okay, these are some of the challenges I am having now. I don't have access to a tablet to access this online course, or which might be very similar context that these alumni have grown up with, so can give that real tangible supportive within the challenges of our community. How can we overcome them? How have I overcome overcome these challenges? What resources have I leveraged that exist within our community to get to where I have? And the interesting thing is that alumni are, it's not just successful alumni that are valuable in this context, but actually there'll be a lot of alumni who have gone now that with foresight and with hindsight, I now know that if I had concentrated on X, Y, or Z more at school, these are like, today I'm realizing as I seek jobs or as I seek admission at a university, these are the challenges I'm facing. And if I had done X, Y, or Z at school, then this would no longer have been a challenge for me. So I think there's also this, there's that near peer sense and that recent experience, which is really valuable. What we've really found in networks, which is really helpful, is people don't the most valuable support is not from the person who's 10 steps ahead of you, but actually from the person who's 2 steps ahead of you, so they can help you and support you in getting to the next step, because that's also recent memory for them. And there's also just this relatability of age. You're not someone who's 30 years older than me who no longer understands what it's like to be a young person in today's day and age. You are still roughly the broad age category as me. So there's that sense of young people and children can be more open to near peer role models.
And I think I would just add to that certainly, I mean, we've been doing a lot of work also with refugees, and I've worked with refugee populations for a while, and I think that's a great example of a very marginalized community of young people, and as they have access to certain courses and scholarships, actually what comes from them is they need to hear from somebody like them, because they're the only person that can tell them, when you apply for this scholarship, you need to be thinking of this type of visa. You need to be thinking about what are your next steps, knowing that maybe you want to come back to where you are now. So it really comes across that you need to have that type of role model who is maybe just a few years ahead of you and is the only person that can really help you through some of these challenges and things for you to think ahead about as well.
Right. Thank you for answering that question. It's very interesting in terms of how role models. The general conception of role models is like someone who has been super successful or super popular or super rich, and then some young people aspire to be like that. But it's truly that we are surrounded by role models, and Prerna's observation that. Someone who's 2 steps ahead of you is often, you might find more solidarity or more connection with them rather than someone who's 10 steps. A follow-up question on this was also as to, in the communities that you are working with the role models you're working with, what is the incentive of like I'm using the word incentive, but what drives or motivates the role models to be part of this, to really kind of be on board with these important missions that you're driving?
Yeah, I think it really depends also on the kind of context you're working with. So we, I think as Gemma shared earlier, we work both with schooling networks and organizations that run programs for young people. Now, in the school space, and sometimes also in the program space, depending on how long it is, there's this shared experience. If you've gone to the same school for 10, 12 years, you have like half of your identity in your childhood is defined by that school. You have positive memories. Tomorrow, if I get and I often have gotten emails from my old school going, a student is interviewing for the same subject you applied for at university and got in, would you give them some advice or would you speak to them? Which are things we're all very happy to do, because we've also gotten so much out of that institution, and where we are today to a large degree is a result of that initial support we had. So I think the shared experience, the sense of belonging to that institution and the resulting sense of gratitude that comes with it, generally automatically creates the sense of I want to give back, right? It's not an external facilitator who you have to convince with sort of incentives to do that. There is also, you might be thinking in the foundational literacy movement where so many people are involved, there's one type of network that comes from the shared experience, but another type of bonding and strong sense of network and belonging that comes from a shared sense of purpose. So you might actually, in the case of this literacy movement, be attracting those that strongly resonate and associate with that shared purpose of foundational literacy is the crux of and the beginning of any sort of development. And it's that powerful sense of shared belonging that needs to be inculcated, communicated effectively to draw people in who have the same shared values around that movement. So I think it's that shared purpose and shared sense of experience and belonging that work together to bring people into the movement.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. And it was interesting to also see one example which you cited about girl child education and global warming. I think these were two examples shared. And when we are talking about and as Gemma also mentioned that there is like with the disruption that has happened, we are seeing a risk of a large number of children dropping out, especially girls. And even when we are talking about digital remote learning, there is clearly, like a discrimination of with respect to girls having access to digital devices as well. So, are we is there any kind of like success story where we are seeing that that alumni networks have successfully helped bridge this divide and have kind of but it's also about convincing communities, right? It's about addressing the attitudes of the gender norms and attitudes of the communities and parents towards the education. So how has the experience of these role models been so far with respect to addressing this major challenge? Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. I think what's really interesting of what you said there is, again, alumni are a really powerful resource here because they're embedded in the community. You don't want an international NGO or an international body coming into the community saying, your culture is wrong, your context is wrong, this is how, like, the right way to do things is X. That's actually disruptive in an unhelpful way to a community and creates more backlash rather than anything else. Now, the power of alumni is they've also grown up in the community, so they understand the culture context, but they also are able to negotiate it in terms that work for the community. So I think an interesting example we can perhaps cite is one of the organizations who are part of our global network that Gemma referred to, Nexus. They're called Nirantar Trust, and they're actually based in India. They support out of school adolescent and girls and women who live in sort of urban, semi-urban, peri-urban areas in and around Delhi, and sort of slum-like in settings where often the gender norms are that no, a girl cannot leave the house on her own a girl cannot work, a girl cannot step out of the house on her own. And what they've done in that is that they've got a program where they've got something called PACE centers, where they've got a learning curriculum that's based also through a gender and sexuality lens. And their alumni community is incredibly powerful because where they've faced all of these restrictive gender norms, they've created such strong bonds and relationships with each other that they are able to present a collective voice within their communities, within their families, to advocate for each other. So where they've had situations of a member of their community being pressured to get married at a very young age, and they've prevented child marriage in a lot of different contexts by kind of banding together as alumni girls and sort of negotiating with the families in the language and the setup that works for them. They've also been actually, during the pandemic, they have proven themselves instrumental in, whilst everyone else was hiding in their homes and protecting themselves from the pandemic, they were played a crucial role in supporting in distributing rations, supporting in spreading health and medical information within their communities, and actually slowly changing that image of these girls as being dependents that need protection to actually the people who are protecting the community and supporting the community themselves. So I think because the alumni have such a strong sense of shared belonging with each other, they're able to create this shared voice to negotiate within their communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the example I can use is certainly a refugee organization I've worked with before. So last year when COVID happened, a lot of their alumni actually came back to Jordan and Lebanon to teach physically because they realized that the students within the camps, obviously the technology is not available there. So everything that had moved online wasn't accessible. So these alumni volunteered and they came back and they came to the camp and spent a month or two per cohort and continued teaching. So, I mean, that's a fantastic example of tapping into your resources, right? It's low cost. And these people feel that they want to give back because they've had the opportunity and now they understand fully that the people still in the camp are not going to be able to continue unless they get involved. And so that was a really incredible example of how you can use your alumni to continue your programs and ensure that these people keep learning.
Thank you, Gemma and Prerna, for answering that question. In fact, you mentioned Jordan. We had Rana Dajani as one of our speakers earlier, who's also doing wonderful work with respect to these community of volunteers who are teaching or reading aloud stories in their communities, and it was quite wonderful to learn more about that. And yeah, it's quite amazing to know about this example which you mentioned. We have one comment from the audience as well. I think it's related to what you just what you and Prerna just explained, that tens and of millions of girls are at the risk of never returning to school, and some of the efforts for providing foundational literacy to such girls. So I think you've helped answer that through these examples as well. Another question that we had was also as to you talked about this, this cohesion or this sense of attraction or the really strong relationship which the community alumni have with the community. Is there, with respect to what is the network of the alumni themselves, how does INHIVE ensure that among the alumni networks as well, there is that sense of cohesion and that sense of community? Like, do you have, for example, some community like alumni dinners or something like that, which we would have in schools?
So this is actually the crux of our work at InHive, in that I think so far we've painted this very positive story of alumni want to give back and want to come back to schools and support, which is all true. And we've got a lot of research to show that. Actually, we've done research across several countries to show that 50-60% of adults would happily go back to their schools to support, but currently only 2% do, because the structures don't exist to enable them to do so. And this is where a lot of our work comes in, of you need to communicate that shared purpose, so that vision that brings them together. But also, as you said, individual alumni might be able to help, but where the power comes is when they work as a collective. And to enable that to happen, we need to build strong bonds of connection across the alumni. Now, some of it might exist in that they all went to school together, so some people are friends, but that will be small bunches, right? So a lot of our work is around supporting organizations and schooling networks create leadership structures around alumni networks. They don't just build organically, or they can, but they won't last for decades organically unless you create structures around them. So we support organizations in identifying the natural leaders, support in training and capacity building of those leaders, of how they can continue alumni engagement activities. Now, again, as you said, something like a dinner might be enjoyable for that one night, and people will say, we'll meet again. There'll be excitement, but then life gets busy, right? And then people forget, and that follow-up doesn't happen. So a lot of our work is around supporting organizations in building regular communication to alumni, sharing regular opportunities with alumni. There's a huge scope of alumni to even support each other within their professional development. So creating the structures, the committees, the events where alumni can support each other, institutions can provide opportunities and share opportunities for further development with alumni. And so creating that continuous engagement, that continuous communication, but also creating engagement and activities around the alumni is a big piece of our work as well.
And I think embedding it before they become alumni as well helps the structure, because if they can see the alumni already helping and the benefits of that, then they themselves, go on to be the next set of alumni, and that helps with the structure. And I see United World Colleges do this incredibly well, where before you've even started your school, the alumni are getting in touch with you and helping you to apply and helping you get to your school. And then by the time they leave the school and they do become alumni, they're the new leaders of the alumni, if you like. So that excitement and that drive continues, because it is true. If you've been an alumni for sort of 10, 15 years, that excitement and drive might not be there because you're busy with other things. You're still connected, but you're not possibly a driver of it anymore. So it's really important to keep those drivers and those amplifiers. And I think that comes from the newer alumni, and that's all about embedding that from the institutional level. Like, it's part of your strategy to have alumni and have a strategy for alumni and how to engage them and how they're useful to you. And that will then help create those structures that Prerna was mentioning. So I think it's all about that mindset of embedding it in.
One thing to also add there is you do need a little bit of resource to make this happen, because a lot of the regular communication with alumni, organizing events, the sort of logistical pieces just need organizational power behind them, a coordinator who brings people together, because the alumni will drive initiatives, but you do need a coordinator to also manage the network.
Right. Thanks for sharing those thoughts, Gemma and Prerna. I think it's truly a very like a refreshing take on, and potentially very disruptive way of scaling up positive impact of by tapping into networks of the alumni, because it's again it's cost effective, it is replicable, also scalable. So it's truly very refreshing, the ideas that you have shared. In conclusion, if any organization or individual wants to leverage their alumni networks, and like, because I think many organizations, actually grassroots organizations, do not see the potential that okay, there is that alumni network. How can they how can InHive help them, and in what areas do you support organizations? If you'd like to share that.
Yeah, so a lot of we do quite a few pieces of work around this. One of our approaches actually serving as consultants for organizations who are interested in thinking through their alumni strategy, and we help them build this out and also support with some of the early implementation of it till they're at a stage where they can independently run the network. And so that's one part of quite intensive support. And increasingly, we're also building thought leadership and running sort of cohorts and network learning series where organizations can sort of engage with some of this thinking. I think Gemma also referred to our Nexus Global Network, which is a network of network practitioners really who are sharing and learning together. So I think those are three spaces that we can support and engage organizations thinking about this. And I think the best starting point is, I know, Mashud, you've got our contact details. So if anyone is interested in thinking about this together, just initially getting on a call with us and seeing the variety of different ways that we can support them in seeing what suits their needs most effectively.
Right. On that note, thank you so much, both of you, Ms. Gemma May and Ms. Prerna Swani. It has been an absolutely wonderful conversation, and I think you've really shared some very powerful points to kind of reimagine the ways in which we can address problems at scale. And as we have been discussing over the past few weeks, that foundational literacy numeracy is one of the biggest crises, and we here at Global Dream are trying to advocate of treating foundational learning crisis as an emergency, just like the pandemic, and that's the only way it can be addressed. So thank you once again, and to all those who have joined us live and who will be watching this video in the upcoming future. We hope that you can take away some of these ideas which Gemma and Prerna have shared with us. And just today, just make a list of your alumni network and start thinking on how you can leverage them to make impact on scale. On that note, thank you once again, and we'll see you in the next session of the DTalk.